So, hello, everyone. I am so excited that you are here and joining me with the lovely Ashley Heywood, who is a wonderful EFT practitioner who qualified with us last year. And you specialize in working with mothers and children and particularly anxious families. Is that right?
That's right.
And you're hoping to get it into schools, which is absolutely incredible because don't schools need it so much?
Mhm.
So I'm very, very excited to have you here with me because you were one of the first people who read my book, which was very scary because no one pretty much had read it. So I was quite apprehensive to hear the feedback, but I'm very happy to say that it was really, really positive. And it would be great if you could share a little bit about your experience of reading my book. And I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions that you mentioned to me that was a result of reading the book. So, one thing that you said that sometimes you find yourself yelling at your children and that tapping's really helped you. So, for the people watching, how did that help?
Absolutely. So I don't think I recognized sometimes I can be quite reactive as a parent. And I definitely have that anger mode, when they're just acting out, you don't feel like you have any control. And the logical part of me would know this had no effect. It didn't help if I got angry. It didn't help if I yelled. It probably fueled the fire. And what I found was that when I would just take that 2 minutes just to take time to just tap, which your book was really helpful in getting me in the habit of that, I actually created more time because I spent less time trying to get them to cooperate. And it created a lot more peace within my energy system. And as you know, children feed on your energy. They can pick up on how you're feeling. And they
Absolutely.
don't necessarily differentiate between the negative and positive attention. So I'd get caught in that cycle. And I feel like the tapping just helps me to break that and create a space to come at things with a new angle, with more compassion and more understanding, instead of just labeling that as bad behavior and really trying to understand the root cause of their behavior, which, yeah, it helped me get to a solution quicker in a
Fantastic.
more functional way.
That is so brilliant. And I just want to say your children are so lucky to have you as a mum because, if only every mum would have the ability to actually just stop in that moment. First of all, recognize the fact that they're reacting because it's so easy to react and not notice until afterwards and then feel that guilt and then kind of like it's too late. Well, it's never too late to repair, of course, because our children are so forgiving and do love us unconditionally. So it's never too late to make a change. But if you can stop yourself in that moment and notice in that moment, it can just change the situation.
And I have to say, what's really great about that also is when you're tapping, because I talk about tapping and I have it, I've got this lovely teddy tapping bear for them as well. So they know that that's self-care and mommy's looking after herself, and so they see that as a positive and they pick up on it, and it really helps to teach them about tapping as well. So sometimes we think we don't have time, but actually it's okay to tap silently. I won't necessarily say the words out loud, but in my head, if I'm feeling frustrated with them, I'll just tap, clear my energy, even if they're there around me. And it's just taking that time and knowing that it's okay to give yourself permission to do that, because them seeing that is really setting the example to look after themselves as well. So, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now you just pop your little tapping teddy into the view, and you can see mine behind me. Can you just say a bit about tapping Teddy and why you've got him and what he's used for?
Yes, he is really lovely because as soon as the kids see him, they just find he's really cuddly and magical. And they can just tap on Teddy instead of tapping on themselves. So some children prefer to connect in that creative way. And when you're tapping on Teddy, you can actually still shift things, because it's like the mirror neurons. So when you see it, it's that empathy, and you do feel the shifts happening. And I have got tapping Teddy into some schools as well as just carrying him in my car. So the kids really adore him, and they absolutely love just saying positive phrases. We've used singing with it. Uh, and this is another thing. You think, well, when do I have time to bring tapping with my kids? He is always in the car on the way to school, in the
Wow.
back seat, and my kids take turns and they just tap. and they put positive reframes in, or they'll sing songs. And sometimes I'll give them some input, but really they like to get creative and come up with their own sort of affirmations for the day, so that they go into school feeling really happy and safe. I've also, because he was in the car the other day, there was a mum at school and she was with her child was crying and she wouldn't go into the school gate. The teacher was there, and I was like, I went back to the car and I saw I had tapping Teddy, and so I was like, maybe I should just see if this would help. And I knelt down so that I was at her level, you know, in the ground, and I just came up and said, you know, tapping Teddy, he just really adores children and he loves to hear about how you're feeling. And if you tap on his magical buttons, it helps to help you feel safe and really happy. And so she was just enamored, immediately connected with that teddy bear, and she started tapping, and it didn't take a minute. And then I offered her to have a little hug with the teddy, and she gave him a little hug. And I offered the mother to tap on Teddy too. And so she joined in, and then she was able to walk into school. So the mother was walking back to her car as I was walking back to mine. She was just so really grateful. So it's just so uncomplicated. And that's why I really like tapping, because you can just connect so easily with it. Children can really connect, and it's just so quick with kids.
That is so incredible. Can you imagine the number of times, the number of mums who have had the experience of a crying child not wanting to go into school? I mean, I've experienced that when my daughter was little, and unfortunately I didn't have tapping at the time, but oh my goodness, if I had. I'm sure, you know, the people watching are just thinking that, you know, every mum needs a tapping Teddy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that your children tap in the car and they sing. What kind of things do they tap on? What examples can you think of anything offhand?
So usually they'll tap on a singing, being like a rainbow energy or like a sunflower. We can get really creative with it. And we tap, there's a lot of songs on YouTube, so we don't always reinvent the wheel, or we'll use, you know, Farajaka. And Georgia just loves to make up her own words, but one of the ones they like, which I think is on the somewhere on the internet, is "I am happy being me, I'm a happy child," and they'll sing that song. And we'll just weave in things like themes of it's okay to make mistakes. I celebrate that. I know I'm learning. I'm a good friend. So we'll just pick a positive affirmation. I'm enough being me. I really love learning, and I'm so excited. My teachers are so nice. We tap about everything that's so lovely. Just loads of positives, just building mostly on positives. Occasionally, Georgia might have an upset or something might happen. And so we will acknowledge that, but in a really creative way. So one day I showed up at World Book Day and she was dressed as a fairy, and I didn't realize it wasn't a thing that happened at this school. And so she was the only one dressed up. So I had to take her home. But rather than gunge up all those feelings, like with an adult, you kind of really get very specific with things. But for her, we just acknowledged the feelings, and she tapped on putting them in a beautiful garden, and she put some sunflowers around the garden, and just tapping on Teddy by allowing her feelings to be sort of heard, really, and validated by using the garden metaphor. And this is why I love tapping, because you can get so creative and really make it pretty. And she walked into that school with the disappointment was just gone. She was feeling really happy, and yeah, it didn't bother her at all.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's so incredible. Wow. So another question that I have for you is, being a busy mum, as pretty much all mums are, how do you actually find the time to do the tapping in addition to everything else that you're doing in your daily life?
I find with tapping, it's best for me in the morning. So the first, with my coffee, just in bed, just have that little bit of time where I wake up just before they do, because it doesn't take too long, just 5 minutes. And I really like that because it just sets the intention for the day for me as well. You know, if I'm walking my dog, because that's another sort of chore and responsibility, and sometimes you just think you've got so many things to do, right? But I usually walk in the woods and there's not a lot of people, so I'll let her off the lead. And it's nice because I'll just be tapping on myself, walking through the woods on anything. I'll just sort of have a check and see if there's anything bothering me that I'm not quite aware of. Because sometimes we push things back in our subconscious and we're not really, you know, making the time or space to realize. But I'll suddenly realize, oh, that's bothering me a bit. I'll just tap on it, and it's just 3 or 4 minutes walking through the woods, and again, just really energizing me for the day and keeping me in a peaceful place.
Fantastic. So some mums would say to me, you don't know how it is for me. I don't have that time. When I wake up, I have to get going immediately, and usually I haven't slept well, and I'm not in that kind of frame of mind to spend a few minutes on myself. So what I tend to say, and I don't know if you've tried this, is like tapping for a couple of minutes on in the shower, on the loo.
Absolutely.
So if you're watching this and you don't have the luxury, I mean, it's not a luxury, I'd say it's essential to go for walks, but some mums would consider it a luxury, then you
can't
always
beat doing it on the loo. Everybody's got to go to the loo, so at least you can tap 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say is often, I find that there is that hamster wheel effect, right? And you constantly know, and there's that pressure to constantly be productive. But what I find is there's so much there that if I don't tap, yes, I can be on that hamster wheel and I can be really, really busy. But it's actually the tapping that creates that space for me to be a bit more productive when I get back on the hamster wheel. So in effect, I'm actually getting more done. So.
I totally agree. So it's like you're investing 5 minutes or 3 minutes of your time, and then the time becomes more productive because you're thinking more clearly, calmer, and then you can get things done in a more methodical or relaxed way, rather than thinking, what shall I do? Yeah, fantastic. So if anyone watching has any questions for Ashley, do type them in the chat. But in the meantime, I've got some other questions. Let's have a look. So you said, we've kind of covered that, so I won't do that one. So one thing that you mentioned is that tapping helped you with your need to be a perfect mum and get it right, which I know I can relate to for sure, and I know many mums can. So how did it help with that?
Yeah. So I think sometimes, you've got this inner committee, you've got this part of you that says, yes, I'm doing really great. And you've got that little inner critic that's going, you're screwing your kids up, and I think your book was really helpful, if I'm honest, because as a tapper, I was really involved in helping other people and really passionate. And I think it made me realize I was leaving my own self-care with a huge theme in my life, being a mother. It's just something that you don't always take the time to recognize. So I found your book was really helping me be accountable in that sort of area. And it was, I'd come to a chapter where I'd be like, oh, this isn't me, I'm fine with that. And then I'd find myself tapping. I was quite surprised, for example, the chapter that would deal with the mum guilt. I didn't realize how much mum guilt I was suppressing, that I didn't want to realize that I had, because of that need to really prove to myself that I'm good enough, I'm doing everything right. And so I would tap on that mum guilt and feel such a huge release. And I realized, wow, okay. So that just was really helpful to do that every day. And it became like a real habit for me. So the book was amazing. I absolutely loved it for that reason. What was the question again? I'm sorry, I don't know if I went off tangent there.
Yeah, how did it help you with trying to get it right and be perfect?
Yeah, and that allowing yourself to make mistakes and realizing you don't have to be perfect, I think. So, with that energy where you feel like you've got the weight on the world, the tapping just sort of just like makes you relax immediately. And all your kids really need you to do is just be present, and it's that realization. Your book really brings that in so much, that you don't have to be perfect. You just need to be really present. And when you're tapping and clearing all that stress, and it just creates so much more space for you to do that, and to be in that place of compassion for yourself and for them. And if you're compassionate for yourself, your children are going to copy that. They're going to choose to be compassionate for themselves. So it's a real win-win.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we have Jessica joined us today, and she's asking, can you use any teddy as a tapping teddy? And I've got a bought tapping teddy, so I've got one that's got built-in little hearts in, and I think you've made your own. Is that right?
I will give credit to my husband, who did all the sewing, because I am really terrible at sewing. But yes, he's.
Give us a close-up. Give us a close-up.
Okay. Where's my camera? Let's see. To the right.
There we are. There we are. Oh, gorgeous.
Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous. So the only thing I would say, so you can sew on buttons. If you're not someone who's very good at buttons and sewing, then you could Velcro something on, or you could even put stickers on. But the only thing I would say is probably, and I don't know what you think about this, Ashley, but some people don't like giving their child their favorite teddy to do it, because you don't necessarily want to give all your sad and bad feelings to your favorite teddy. But, you know, that might not be the case with you. I don't know what you think about that.
I absolutely think it depends on the child and just seeing what works and having an experiment. So absolutely right. I agree with what you said. And then sometimes it might be if there's a specific teddy that they find really comforting at bedtime, and if the issue is about sleeping and they just want to, you know, need help for relaxing, they may have a special teddy that they'd be happy to help with that. And, you know, they could just sort of mimic the mother with the points. And if they didn't have time for buttons, or they felt they weren't crafty enough to put buttons on, you could still do the tapping just based on looking at some pictures and looking at some videos and knowing the points yourself, because the children are quite easy to mirror and do exactly what you're doing. But the buttons do make it a lot easier, I have to say.
Yeah. And you can also tap on your children. So you can literally physically tap with your children, and that can be very soothing and calming, particularly when it comes to the finger points. One thing I often say to mums is just take your child's hand, and when they're lying in bed, and just you can tap on those finger points as well.
Yeah. I was just going to say with that, I've had a mother that I was teaching how to use it specifically to help her daughter who wasn't sleeping. So every time she used the tapping in the evening, her daughter was able to sleep. And the one time she didn't use it because her daughter was exhausted, she didn't actually sleep as well. But it really made a difference in her life. And sometimes she enjoyed the tapping. So she'd sit next to her on the bed and just tap on her points, or just tap on the finger points. And sometimes she preferred just for her to tap surrogately. So sometimes the mother would just sit there and tap for her. So yeah, and it worked.
Wonderful. Amazing. Wonderful. Jessica's saying, love the homemade tapping point teddy. How would you go about first introducing tapping teddy idea to them, please? Okay, so why don't you share how you introduced your tapping teddy to your children?
Well, they've been seeing me tap for a while, but often when I introduce him to children that don't know, I just say, I'm usually dressed as a fairy, by the way. So I'm the magical fairy. I've got my fairy wings. Yeah. And when I go to school,
you should have worn them.
I know, they're on the wall behind me somewhere. I don't know if you can see my wings there.
Oh, yes.
So basically, I just describe him as a lovely bear. They know I can hear everything he says, and he adores children, and he loves to help children. And if you just tap on his magic buttons, and then it helps you to feel really good about yourself. And then we go into a dialogue about understanding that they also have magical buttons that are invisible. So, you know, and we just do a demonstration. And I usually start with Teddy. So Teddy might be having a problem. Maybe he's worried about his spelling test. And the children get involved. Where do you think he might feel that in his body? So it's really getting children to focus on connecting with their body. And what is the main worry, do you think, that he feels, and how big is the problem? And so we'll do a tapping round. And the children love it because they get to help Teddy shift his problem. So they repeat the words with me, and they can relate to it. And that's kind of how I introduce it, really, just very gently. And we tap on loads of positives, and I get the children to just come up with their own sort of, what would Teddy like to feel? And yeah, it's really lovely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. So how you mentioned that you noticed yourself changing as a result of doing the 30 days of tapping that's mentioned in the book. How do you, and I know it's a while ago that you did this now, so if you remember, how do you feel that you changed?
I definitely feel I'm a lot more relaxed as a parent. I definitely don't yell very often at all. If I do slip up, I go straight into tapping because I just know that it's not effective. So, and I know that it's possible I've gone, you know, into stress mode, not because of them, but because I've got other things going on and I just haven't taken the time to clear it. So I'd say I definitely don't really yell anymore. And I feel more relaxed. If there is something going on with them, I don't feel the worry as much. You know, when something's going on with them, I just feel in a place to just help them using the tapping teddy if they're open to it, or just understanding what tapping has really taught me is just understanding that children, as do we, need to just have a voice, need to be heard, and not necessarily fix it. They've had a long day from school. Sometimes they haven't been able to process everything. There's a lot of stimulation, and sometimes, yeah, it's just, I would say tapping's made me more creative in finding solutions of how to support my children. And when I tap on myself, it always creates that space to think, well, what could I do differently, or what might they need? So I feel it really opens the intuition of how your child's feeling, and that empathy, and allowing yourself to just really be supportive in a way that's really functional, and yeah, and allowing them to feel what they feel without that shame, not trying to fix it or say move on, be okay, and stop crying, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
acceptance.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Um, and I know you mentioned that you tapped with a child at the school gate. Are there any other situations or that you can share, maybe with with mums, anything else that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I've been working a lot with mothers actually and teaching them how to use it, and I am hoping to maybe get into schools more, because I feel there's a real need for things that are masked with children at a young age, and teaching mothers how to use it and being able to be available in school to do it is just ideal. But another one was just, again, it's just connecting kids to their bodies and teaching them how to use tapping teddy, or the mother tapping on themselves. Kids will mirror, and they like it. It's nice. So I had one mother that said she used what I taught her to, her little boy was feeling sick, and this was a theme she was often experiencing, that he would get sick. And so she, instead of trying to push that away, which we often do, we try to run away from what we're feeling, or we don't want to feel it, and it just grows and happens anyway, doesn't it? And she taught him to tap on what he was feeling, and just tapping and acknowledging and going through all the points helped it dissolve, helped it sort of melt away, and he just began laughing. So
Wow.
he laughed, and it was the first time he hadn't actually, vomited this time. And so it was just proofs in the pudding. So I know it sounds wacky to a lot of people, but there's so much evidence out there. And when you use it and try it and just simply connect to your emotions and your body and where you feel it, that's the magic's there. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's absolutely brilliant. So you kindly said that you're willing to do some tapping together. So you're going to be my echo on this. So what that means for those of you watching who haven't done any EFT or tapping before, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. It's like acupuncture for emotions without the use of needles. And the invitation is simply to do what I do and say what I say when Ashley says it. And if you do tap along with me, then you agree to take responsibility for your own well-being. So we're going to do some tapping on the school run stress, getting ready for school in the morning. I know that many, many mums can relate to. So do you want to share anything of your school run, or how the sticking points for you, or do you want yeah?
Well, just asking them to get ready, and then 5 seconds later they're still staring in the mirror. I'm not sure where they get that from. But yeah, and you'll have one who wakes up on time and it's fine, and the other one's still being a lazy bear, and I don't know why. And it's like, they'll be going through the growth spurts or whatever, but it's that pressure to get them to school on time, because you just think, oh, this is going to be embarrassing if I'm late. And it's, I just find that you're trying to get yourself ready, and then they're at that age where they can get their own clothes on and stuff, and you've got it laid out, and it's quite stressful sometimes when they just take their time.
Yeah,
They do. And
yeah,
you try to speak to them logically, and they're still taking their time sometimes, so it's frustrating.
yeah.
And it can sort of start your day off in a panic. So I think that is definitely a huge global theme. Having spoken to a lot of mums, I think, yeah, I'm definitely not alone in that.
Absolutely. And Jessica, or anyone else watching, if there's anything that you feel particularly strongly around that, we can bring those words in if you tap them into the comments as well. So if I see any comments, I'll feed them into the tapping. So first of all, if for those of you watching who want to tap along, and for you, Ashley, you can do this as well. When you think about those really tricky moments and during the school run, getting the children ready, when you think about that now and you rate that feeling on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being calm, light and peaceful, and 10 feeling as stressed as one can be, where would you put yourself? And just either write that down or make a mental note and notice what the emotion is. You've already mentioned a sense of panic. For other people, it might be anxiety. You can feel it in your chest.
Constriction, like constriction in the chest, that sort of panic. A little bit of anger, that sort of go-to emotion for me because they're not listening. Yeah.
Great. So that's really, really helpful. So for you, watching it might be something else. It might be worry or frustration or guilt that you haven't, for whatever reason. But we'll just focus on what's here, and I'll just throw some other things up. So Jessica's saying children whining about having to get ready. Okay. So let's do some tapping. So even though when I think about this, getting ready for school,
when I think about this, getting them ready for school,
and asking them to get ready,
and asking them to get ready,
and the pressure of getting them to school on time,
and the pressure of getting them to school on time,
and that embarrassing feeling if we're late,
and that embarrassing feeling if we're late,
I start to feel panicky.
I start to feel panicky.
And I can feel constriction in my chest.
I can feel constriction in my chest.
And anger that they're not doing as they're told.
And anger that they're not doing as they're told.
And they're whining about having to get ready.
And they're whining about having to get ready.
I acknowledge all of this.
I acknowledge all of this.
I acknowledge how it makes me feel.
I acknowledge how it makes me feel.
And I'm open to the possibility.
And I am open to the possibility.
Of finding some compassion for myself.
Of finding some compassion for myself.
In this situation.
In this situation.
And when I say that, if you're watching this, you might think, there's no compassion. It might kind of press some buttons, and that's okay. Just notice what's there and just allow whatever is there to be fully present. So we're going to tap on the top of the head now, asking my children to get ready.
Asking my children to get ready.
And then the eyebrow point, beginning of the eyebrow. And you can use either side, both sides, one side, it doesn't really matter. Children whining about having to get ready.
Children whining about having to get ready.
And then the side of the eye. And noticing how that makes me feel.
And noticing how that makes me feel.
And under the eye. All this pressure.
All this pressure.
To get them to school on time.
To get them to school on time.
And under the nose. And that embarrassing feeling if we're late.
And that embarrassing feeling if we're late.
And on the chin point. And I can feel this constriction in my chest.
And I can feel this constriction in my chest.
And on the collarbone point, which is just slightly to the side of the center. Use the whole palm of your hand if it's easier. And this anger because they're not listening.
And this anger because they're not listening.
And under the arm. It's just on the bra strap. And I acknowledge how this makes me feel.
And I acknowledge how this makes me feel.
And top of the head. And as I acknowledge all of these feelings.
And as I acknowledge all of these feelings.
Eyebrow point. I'm open to the possibility.
I'm open to the possibility.
Of noticing my feet on the ground right now.
Of noticing my feet on the ground right now.
And side of the eye. I'm noticing my body in the chair.
I'm noticing my body in the chair.
Under the eye. I'm noticing my breath just as it is.
I'm noticing my breath just as it is.
Under the nose. I'm noticing any thoughts or feelings that I'm experiencing.
I'm noticing any thoughts and feelings that I am experiencing.
On the chin point. And I'm open to the possibility.
And I am open to the possibility.
Of not judging those feelings.
Of not judging those feelings.
And on the collarbone point. These feelings are energy.
These feelings are energy.
And energy can move.
And energy can move.
And under the arm. So I'm open to the possibility.
So I'm open to the possibility.
Top of the head. Of coming into this present moment.
Of coming into this present moment.
And eyebrow point. And as I do that.
And as I do that.
I begin to feel calmer.
I begin to feel calmer.
Does that feel true for you?
Absolutely. I feel super calm. I could go to sleep now. It's like,
Great.
And it really feels like it's not a really big deal anymore. Like it's not the end of the world.
Amazing. Yeah. Brilliant. And as I feel this calmer feeling.
And as I feel this calmer feeling.
Under the eye. I'm open to the possibility.
I'm open to the possibility.
Of sending that calm feeling forwards.
Of sending that calm feeling forwards.
Into my next morning run, which obviously won't be tomorrow because it's Friday, but my next morning run.
Into my next morning run.
Under the nose. Infusing calm and ease.
Infusing calm and ease.
And on the chin point. Into my next morning run.
Into my next morning run.
Collarbone. Collarbone. Infusing patience into my next morning run.
Infusing patience into my next morning run.
And under the arm. Infusing energy and vitality.
Infusing energy and vitality.
Into how I wake up.
Into how I wake up.
And how I feel during the morning run.
And how I feel during the morning run.
Top of the head. Infusing calm and ease into my children.
Infusing calm and ease into my children.
So that they too experience ease in the morning run.
So that they too experience ease in the morning run.
Beginning of the eyebrow. I'm open to the possibility.
I'm open to the possibility.
Of trusting my children more.
Of trusting my children more.
So that even if they're not cooperating.
So even if they're not cooperating.
We can experience.
We can experience.
A gentle morning run.
A gentle morning run.
Side of the eye. Infusing even more trust.
Infusing even more trust.
Into the process of getting them to school.
Into the process of getting them to school.
Knowing that it can be a gentle process.
Knowing that it can be a gentle process.
Under the eye. And coming back to this present moment again.
And coming back to this present moment again.
And under the nose. And as you tap under the nose, just take a nice deep breath in. And on the chin point. And radiating this calmer feeling.
And radiating this calmer feeling.
Into the rest of my day.
Into the rest of my day.
And the rest of my children's day.
And the rest of my children's day.
And on the collarbone point. Infusing even more calm and ease.
Infusing even more calm and ease.
Into all those tricky moments of the day.
into all those tricky moments of the day.
Like pick up and bedtime.
Like pick up and bedtime.
And under the arm, infusing magic and miracles.
Infusing magic and miracles.
Into my experience of parenting.
Into my experience of parenting.
And my children.
And my children.
Put your hands on your heart chakra, center of the chest, and say transform and take it deep breath. Transform. So thank you for being my echo.
That was really lovely. I think sometimes I'm very much like the firefly energy, which is buzzy, buzzy, buzzy. And it's like, it's okay to have fireflies, but now I feel like it's that sort of calm, excited, motivated energy for the day. So I feel really good. And if I think about stepping into the scene where I'm getting ready with the kids and trying to help them, I can see a calm mother and a lovely energy, and it feels really okay. Like I've got this, we've got this, and it's okay.
That's fantastic. So for those of you watching, if you haven't done EFT before, one of three things will have happened when you rate the intensity when you think about the school run again. Either your number will have gone down, which is a good thing because you'll be feeling calmer, or it will have stayed the same, which there are lots of different things one can do for that, but it's more than I could explain right now. But please do comment if that's the case for you. And it may have gone up, your number, which if it has, please don't worry. The reason would be is that you may have suppressed all those feelings about the school run because you're so busy rushing around. And then all of a sudden we've been talking about those feelings and acknowledging them. And by doing that, we're actually shining a light on them and it can feel stronger. But if that's the case, just repeat the tapping process. So just go back to the beginning of the tapping, repeat it again, and it will begin to reduce. So other things that may have happened, even if the intensity hasn't reduced, is you might feel calmer, but the number hasn't reduced. You might feel lighter. You might feel more tired or less tired. You might feel tingling in your body or yawning or even burping. And they're all signs that the energy is beginning to shift. So I would love to hear, if you have tapped along with us, then please do write in the comments how you got on. And if this was helpful, please do share this video with your friends and your school mum friends and anyone else who could benefit. And I want to thank you so much, Ashley, for joining me on this. And if there was one final message you might have for mums watching this, particularly mums who have never done this before, what would you say to them?
You can't get it wrong. You just can't get it wrong. So take the pressure off. There's no right or wrong way. Even just tapping on one point sometimes can do a lot. So just have fun with it, I think. Allow yourself to have humor with it, and just celebrate you and focus on not being perfect. Take that pressure off, because I think so many times with a new thing, we think we have to get it perfect, and tapping absolutely works. And you just don't have to have it so perfect with tapping, do you? I mean, that's what I find. You can go in any order you like with tapping, and you don't have to hit all the points, and you're still going to get a lot of calm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that important tip. Thank you so much for joining us. Ashley Heywood is an EFT practitioner specializing in mothers and children and hoping to get it into schools. And what is the website that they can reach you at?
It's whiteriverwellbeing.com.
Thank you. whiteriverwellbeing.com. So you can check Ashley out there. Thank you so much and have an amazing day. You're very welcome.